Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out this headline today. We're going to hear from Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin Company and his talks with Jim Rickards and how BRICS coalition is setting up the US dollar to fail. Make no mistake about it, I believe I'm going to show you how XRP and the Ledger are smack dab in the middle of helping it succeed. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. And again, just for clarity, I'm going to help show you how I believe the US dollar is going to succeed regardless of BRICS efforts to cause it to fail. That's what we're going to look at today. Let's get started. $1.22 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is off by 0.6%, 29,500 plus for Bitcoin, 1855 and change for Ethereum. Tether market cap is 83.4 billion. Number 5 spot is XRP at 63 cents. We're off by 2.3 in the 24-hour and off by 4.7 on the 7-day. If you haven't done it, this is I Trust Capital. It is the best IRA for crypto in the world, on the planet, you name it, the universe. Find a better one, bring it to me. No one's done it in years because there isn't one. You can roll over your 401k, TSP, 403b, 457 and more. And let me tell you, there's legal clarity for XRP. It's back on the board, ladies and gentlemen, so don't mess around. Click the link for iTrust underneath and get that tax-free crypto. Yeah. This is Chris Larson here talking very candidly about the political enemies of crypto and how the U.S. has lost its opportunity to being a leader to the crypto space. Take a listen to this.
But here's the thing. It's the tale of two cities. In the U.S., we have really screwed up blockchain tech and crypto policy. Everywhere else, it's booming. And so we've actually lost our leadership role. It has now moved to Singapore, London, Dubai. They're kind of the three majors that are fighting out. Japan also is a player. Brazil, everywhere basically is kind of welcoming this. And most of our people that we're hiring now are overseas. So we're still booming. We're hiring like crazy. We're just not doing anything in the U.S., even though we're headquartered in San Francisco, and we're committed to San Francisco. And that's a shame.
Let's talk about that. The industry has the perception it's full of scammers, especially around the news around FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried was everywhere talking about crypto, encouraging Washington to regulate crypto, credibly visible, money everywhere. How has his fall affected the industry's profile? Because you're wound up with the SEC and others. I'll get to that in a second, but talk about him as a moment.
Oh, it was just catastrophic. Mostly because he was incredibly political. He saw everybody. So what happened was the supporters, particularly in the Dems, because he seemed to really be going after the Dems, anybody who saw him.
His other founder did the Republicans.
Right, yeah. And the word was there was a bunch of Dem staff members that were kind of really looking forward to joining the company. So when it blew up, all of the supporters were like, okay, Chuck Schumer even said, we can't talk about crypto for 6 months until it cools down. But that did not stop the enemies, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, and the Brad Shermans, California representative. Senator Warren, literally, her campaign slogan is, I'm building an anti-crypto army. Okay, why? It's not like I'm protecting consumers, and she's done great on that. I used to love what she was doing. It just doesn't make any sense, right?
It doesn't make any sense, but it does if you follow the money, right? And if you follow the money, you're going to find bank lobby money that has got their opinion pointed towards crypto bad, banks good. It's pretty simple. But shout out to Chris for being so candid about what he sees here. Meanwhile, around the rest of the world, where, they're obviously taking off, Bank of England moved to design phase on its central bank digital currency. Hopefully we don't have one here. We'll use a retail digital currency for the US dollar known as stable coins, and we can keep the private central bank, the Fed, and all of the government agencies out of it. That would be the best way forward, I believe, and create the strongest demand for that retail digital dollar if you keep that separation. Right here, we see Jay Hunter Anson, who's working on the Palau stablecoin project. Shout out to you, Jay. Says it's great to see. He says it's great to see that the XRP-Ledger technology and Palau stablecoin, based on Ripple CBDC solution design, works as advertised. Retweeting Anthony Welfare's post here that this is fantastic. Anthony, if you don't know, Anthony is a Ripple advisor. This is a fantastic use case for Palau stablecoins. Listen to this. Wait till the world figures this out, ladies and gentlemen. The ability to send payments from one person directly to another, known as P2P, peer-to-peer, with no cost, built-in security, and no need to be in the same geographic location, which you need to do with cash. Game changer. And so is this. Listen to Marcus Treacher, who's not with Ripple anymore, but when he was, listen to him talk about why ISO 20022 is so important to blockchain and the focus working with central banks to send ISO 2002 payments on blockchain technology. Take a quick listen.
Yes, certainly. Thanks for the question. I think looking at the payment standards globally, there's kind of an elephant in the room, which is that the current standards network, or the current standards people use around the world, really is very fragmented and not fit for purpose. So to enable payments to become really effective and to do really good service for the global economy and society, you really got to rethink how we go about standardizing information, how we go about making the payment really come to life so that the information around the transaction, around the underlying activities is communicated with the payment instruction. So I think, again, an area that we're looking at very, very deeply at Ripple, and we're deploying very quickly with central banks worldwide, is to create payments which are delivered along with a very strong ISO 20022 compliant block of information, which through blockchain can be recorded in an irrefutable way forever. And that really enables banks and payment companies to kind of rethink how they communicate payment information between each other in a way that makes it much easier for people and companies to receive money, to pay money in a transparent way, cross-border, with a very clear record. And that, it's good for everybody. It reduces the risk of financial crime and misuse of the financial system at source. So we think if we work this way and we can develop these standards in this way, then it takes out enormous costs from the payment industry, because you're able to do compliance, checking, conformity to oversight requirements really at source, rather than have to kind of overlay them as layers of cost and inefficiency over very old payment notes.
It also allows for the ability to attach tokenized value along to that standardized messaging, right? Let us not forget that the real value is data, right? Data is king. Data is the real value here. That's what we're talking about. And we're really talking about the standardization of ISO 2002 payments on blockchain, because it will allow for the coding of digital assets like CBDC, stablecoins, XRP, XLM, XDC, you know the drill, right? That's what it'll allow for. And that is a major step forward. Now, very quickly here, I want you to entertain me here. I want you to stay with me, because I've got something for you to see. But you remember here when I put this post out and we had I think it was 801 who held a late night Twitter space, and David Schwartz popped in and talked about the idea that two world reserve currencies can exist at the same time. The world may prefer a currency that no one controls. No boss is the best boss. And if that happens to make a bunch of cryptocurrency people rich, I don't think we will see that they will see that as a minus. So, it's quite an interesting statement. Now, I'm not going to have to play this again for you, but the part that I want to play for you actually is at the very, very end here. Let me see if I can get it. One second.
Most countries know that if there's going to be a new world reserve currency that's a country's currency, it's not going to be them. Mm-hmm. And so they might actually prefer a currency that nobody can control to one that's controlled by their largest geopolitical rivals. And so that's like what I think is the biggest possible success scenario for digital assets. if these countries are like, okay, well, the US dollar can't hold on forever, but it's not going to be our currency because no one's going to want to repeat the US dollar scenario. You know, nobody but the EU wants the EU to replace the dollar, right? Nobody but Russia wants the ruble to replace the dollar. Nobody but China wants the yuan to replace the dollar. So maybe they could settle on a currency that nobody could control rather than one controlled by their most powerful geopolitical rival. So if you want a success scenario, that's the one that I think is the most likely.
But the more you get everybody to agree.
How do you get everybody to agree? Well, David's under NDAs. You know, I don't want to speak for the guy, but I'll tell you this. You get everybody to agree by doing option contracts, just like you did with R3, right? You tell them, hey, let's enter into an option contract and you'll be better for this coming out the other side. Think of it for a moment. Pre-allocated option contracts to other entities that can bring the liquidity and utility to the network. This is how you make the promise that we don't have to rely on a US dollar as a global reserve currency or the euro or the yuan or some other currency because of exactly what David said. No other country wants to see another country's currency become the world reserve currency because you haven't solved the problem at hand. That's really the issue. But if you could promise them, if they bring their liquidity and utility onto this network, this XRP ledger, right, using the ILP, then you can actually have a conversation about no one controlling the money, right, and everyone having a level playing field going forward. But you have to ask yourself this question.
Well, I mean, they might agree if the alternative is that their geopolitical rivals force some new replacement for the dollar that's not, that just if they just replace, the old boss with a new boss.
Uh-huh.
If the choice is no boss, if that happens to make a bunch of cryptocurrency people rich, I don't think they're going to see that as too much of a minus.
That's good.
Brad, this is an honest question. Ripple is, one of your products is to distribute liquidity through the payments system. So the question is, could there be a run on Ripple?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's an honest question. But nevertheless, let's keep going. We know the BIS said that there's a two-tiered system on a unified ledger. Ripple just joined the BIS task force. Any questions? I am speculating. China digital yuan emerges as challenger to the dollar-denominated payments. Okay. Well, what's interesting about this article is the rise of mBridge. Yes, mBridge. BIS's mBridge. You've heard of it. We've talked about it for years here. Talking about challenging the dollar-denominated payments, daily dollar-involved foreign exchange is a staggering $6.6 trillion. Annual global trade in dollars, $32 trillion. If mBridge gets a slice of the pie, the implications are immense, and they may just be immense for XRP. This is James Wallace when he was talking about mBridge with the BIS and how the XRP ledger with the bridge asset XRP is in fact one of the mBridge models. Or
digital pound. You obviously need to have some way to interact cross-border. Yeah. So I think the BIS call this a multi-CBDC model. One of the ideas is you use a sort of a neutral bridge currency to go from one to the other, similar to the model I explained earlier with our on-demand liquidity.
Okay, so he just told you. Yes, he did just tell you, no doubt about it. And 23 countries applying for BRICS membership as leaders prepare to convene at the summit, which will be August 22nd through the 24th. In just another 12 days, that'll start. Now, this is a clip from Trumor's last night. Shout out to Mr. Intuitive, who had Andy Schechtman from Miles Franklin Company on discussing his talks with Jim Rickards. We know who Jim is. He's worked with the CIA. He's an incredible author, economist, and all-around brilliant guy. He shares his thoughts on how BRIC currency can send the dollar value down the drain with ease. talking about setting the US dollar up to fail. Ladies and gentlemen, I've grabbed the highlights here for you. Take a listen and think about the idea that the Chinese yuan is obviously working with BIS and mBridge. We know that mBridge and one of the models is XRP in the ledger, right? 6.6 daily, 32 trillion annual. I mean, think about these numbers here and getting a percentage of that through this, and think about the BRICS coalition and a currency being built and released, maybe backed by gold, like in this conversation you're going to hear here in a second. Think about what's happening and that paradigm shift, and think about how XRP can be that bridge to insulate the US dollar. But I'm going to add something to that in just 1 second. Take a listen to this clip here.
He said, if the West inflates, the dollar drops, gold goes up, the BRICS win. If the West tries to do what the rest of the world is doing and accumulate gold, the dollar drops, gold goes up, the BRICS win. He said all they have to do, and I suspect they will, is to peg each BRIC currency redeemable, he says, to the governments. And I don't know about the people. The governments could redeem it in gold, and you win. And so that was the other thing that I took away from it, is that that's how simple it would be to disrupt this entire system. And he's pretty adamant that indeed, no matter what, this new system will be tied to gold. He is adamant about it. But what I take away from it more than anything is that all of the countries that represent the majority of human population moving against the West, two things. One, they're not going green, and Saudi Arabia has applied to all of these organizations who are now being protected by two of the three largest nuclear arsenals on the planet. And what most people don't know is the day we left Afghanistan in a very humiliating way, in September of 2021, the day after that, and there was no coincidence in the timing, Russia and Saudi Arabia announced a joint military cooperation agreement. So what you take away from that is simply this. It has been our protection of the Saudi kingdom for the last 50 years that has given us the dollar hegemony and the petrodollar, and now Russia is protecting them. And by signing up with the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, now China is protecting them. They are being protected by the majority of human population. And he believes that as soon as all of the ducks are in a row, they will indeed make these announcements that they are going to accept oil in other currencies. And maybe it's the new BRIC settlement currency where each BRIC is worth an ounce of gold. What I took away from what he had to say are those two things, that indeed gold will have a role in the new system, and that the combination of those two groups with the BRICS makes them an incredibly, incredibly formidable foe. In fact, with a larger GDP than the West, a bigger military presence than the West, and the coalition of the majority of human population, it is something that needs to be understood. And the crime in all of this,
I tell you, the crime in all of this is not enough people know what's really going on here. And I'll share this with you because I think that scenario is extremely powerful. And to add to that scenario is, what do you do if BRICS releases that gold-backed currency and, again, and it sets the US dollar up in a situation that no matter what they try to do, the dollar fails. The dollar goes down. The only thing I can see as a remedy to this is mBridge. It's the XRP ledger. It is the incorporation of a bridge asset that can isolate and insulate the spillover shocks of such a move. But it doesn't stop the damage that it could do to the dollar, however. But what I see in the future is if you can convince the world to move on to a system like this and bring all the liquidity and all the utility, or the greater percentage of it for the world, onto the ledger, you could then back the US dollar by XRP. Because at that point, the value on the XRP ledger would be all of the world's money, all of the world's commodities, all of the world's tokenized derivatives. That is really what I believe the ultimate goal here is, and it is a hell of a goal. And that really comes down to a percentage. It's not if they will accomplish it, Ripple has already begun the journey to accomplish it, and they are doing it. The question really comes down, for me, is a matter of percentage. How much of the world's liquidity and utility will they be able to capture on the XRP ledger? And how much of that will determine whether they can use it as a viable backing to the US dollar, for which you will have all the utility and liquidity, which could support the overprinting of the US dollar for many, many decades to come, because I'm sure they're not going to stop doing that either. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.